Hi there. Well, running a little bit late and more so than usual. Maybe if I had a producer, things would be different. But anyway, this is me. This is Melody's World. So here I am. And at the suggestion of one of my longest, one of the friends I have known for the longest amount of times, Linda Konechny, suggested that I have my hair pulled back in a clip so I don't keep messing with it. But it's kind of a habit right now to mess with my hair, so I'll probably still do it. But anyway, hi. Today is an interesting day because I am happy to see the end of my birthday month. Usually that's not the case, but this month has been a mess, physically speaking, between getting a major surgery at the end of August and taking longer to recover than I expected, and then my shoulder dislocation, and then I had some digestive issues where I ended up in the ER on Friday night. I'm done with September. And I don't think it's just my health. I don't think it's just me. I think the world is kind of nuts right now. Yeah, and it just seems like it's getting more and more that way. And having these discussions with people over the years, it's been a fascinating thing for me because I don't think we're all that different, and yet we're in this place where we see each other as being so far apart. I've talked about this many, many times, obviously, but the thing that really gets to me is that people get so attached to a position that they can't let them see the possibility. They can't face the cognitive dissonance they might feel if they took on looking at things from another person's perspective. And this is not just in the political world, it's in the religious world, it's in the relationship area, it's in our working lives. It's every part of our lives are affected by this because we are an interactive species, right? We don't live by ourselves. Yeah, we might live alone, but we have people that we interact with on a regular basis. And being able to step out of our own shoes and see things from another's perspective can really open our eyes to understanding how a person sees the world. We are not all the same. Even people who perhaps grew up in the same household do not have the same experience of their parents. They have a totally different relationship with their parents. Each child has a different relationship with their parent. Each of us has a different relationship with each person in our lives. It's endless. And we don't understand what that other person's perspective is unless we get curious. And coming back to Maya Angelou's famous quote about what is love, love is presence and curiosity, according to her, which I love, because the curiosity piece is what seems to be missing so much of the time in relationships. We make these assumptions. I was just talking to somebody about that this morning. We make assumptions about what the other person is thinking, and we know them well enough. We think we know them well enough that we're probably right. And maybe you are, maybe you're not. But certainly we don't know for sure. And when there's that old saying, you assume things, you make an ASS of you and me. And that's the way that is. Not all the time, but a big chunk of the time. But even if you assume something, you can see an expression on someone's face or hear a tone in their voice or notice their posture. You might make an assumption about what that means. And you might be somewhat accurate, but you might have missed the cause, for example. Maybe that person is upset about something that has nothing to do with you, but you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, they're mad at me. What am I going to do? How do I fix this? How do I make, when we have no idea what it is they're actually upset about. That very well could be they just don't feel well. I have a couple who, one of the members of the couple has chronic health problems, and a lot of the times the expression on her face makes her partner think that she's unhappy with him, or she might react in a way that seems like she's angry when really she's just in pain. And it's not something that people think about because we think we grow up not talking about what we're actually feeling, not processing what's actually going on in the moment. And because of that, it seems cumbersome, I suppose, because it is a little bit of work. It is some trouble. It requires us to actually communicate, and communicate from a place that is not blaming or shaming. Parents will come in and see a scowl on a kid's face and tell them, cheer up. You have no reason to be unhappy. Well, you don't know that. I don't care who you are. You don't know that. You don't know what's going on in that person's mind. You just don't. And so if you can get out of your own way sometimes and step back and really listen to what the other person is saying, you might not be that far apart. In fact, I think most of the time we're not that far apart, because even this crazy political climate that we're in, right? We see people allowing themselves to be shoved into these corners of, the left is socialist and hateful, or the right is fascist and hateful, when in reality, if you could see things from each other's perspective, you'll see that we've all been treating each other this way based on the propaganda that we've been fed, spoon-fed through the media, through Facebook posts, through our friends' posts, and the algorithms that point us in a certain direction. And we get a concept that we are absolutely right because there's one or two people that agree with us, or there's maybe one or two reports that look like that it's probably accurate. And so we get convinced that we are 100% right, and then we fail to be able to see it from another person's perspective. I know this is something that I have certainly, like most of us who are on the left side of center maybe, or even center, saw the things that happened over COVID because everybody was scared, right? We all were fed this information about how dangerous it was, and we all knew people who actually were very sick, and a lot that died. So it was a very real threat. And because of that, we got into a situation where we weren't necessarily thinking things through all the time. My friend Pamela, who was told, okay, you just had COVID, you don't need to be vaccinated. And so she chose not to be vaccinated. And then all of her liberal friends just treated her like she was stupid, like she was deliberately being hurtful to people, and they bullied her and gave her just a terrible time because they didn't understand that some people have reasons for not doing that have nothing to do with the things that is in your head. And there are lots of people like that who, for their own reasons, chose not to do that. And maybe, I had some friends that I knew that were not vaccinated that died. I don't know of anyone who was vaccinated who did. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. Because as we know, the vaccine is not stopping the illness. It's just kind of slowing it down and making it somewhat less dangerous. And are there side effects to the vaccines? Yes, there are. They're documented. I mean, everything we do medically has side effects, right? Everything. And that doesn't mean it's still not worth attempting. Maybe we're the lucky ones who are part of the majority, by far the majority, who don't get damaged, but there are some people that do. And if you're afraid of that, which it makes sense that you would be, if you're a person who has a lot of health anxieties, it might be something that you would be afraid to do. Or if you have a lot of health anxieties, you might do the opposite, right? You might get all of the shots and make sure that you always get them. It just depends on what your experience is, how you see the world, and what your whole history has taught you about your life and other people. And when we get stuck in this position, oh, there went my glasses. I need new ones anyway. And it causes us to see each other in distorted ways that cause us to disengage from people who we would otherwise love and enjoy. We certainly would at least behave in a respectful way toward them, even if we didn't agree with them. This has been the history of the United States of America since its conception. I mean, yes, certainly there are people who would attack each other for political reasons. That's always been the case, but it's never been to the proportion that it's certainly not in my lifetime, and not that I'm aware of, since the Civil War, perhaps, where people have gotten so thrust into these positions that we believe that the opposite side of the spectrum is 100% wrong. Well, nobody's 100% wrong and nobody's 100% right. I don't care what side of the fence you sit on, because there are good things about, it's like even RFK, who to me, for the most part, when I hear him talking, he seems like a nut. And there's plenty of people that I know that would agree with me. On the other hand, there's a lot of things that he says that are so accurate, and we end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. We just look at the things that are wrong and don't recognize that there might be something about that that's right. And if we can open our minds to consider that there may be some reasons why each of these people, who I can't understand, but there may be some reasons why they're in those select positions that go beyond politics. Some of those reasons may be that there are things that need to change within our system of government. In fact, I am one of those people who has witnessed in my practice people who have been just systematically, literally, abused by our government systems. And because of that, I'm leery of saying that, oh, everything was great before and it's, turning to crap now, because it's not true. It's always, at least in my lifetime, probably before, probably since the 30s or 40s, things have started going in a direction that have caused us to lose connection with what really matters in the government. And we tend to convince ourselves that they have our best interest at heart, and maybe they do at some level, but we aren't really getting to see the whole picture. And because we don't see the whole picture, because so much is kept from us, right? It's top secret. Well, it's top secret not to protect us from our enemies. It's top secret to protect the government from the public from knowing what the government is up to. And that's not just me saying that. It's a well-documented thing that has happened for decades, if not more than that. And which is why I can say it doesn't matter whether you're Democratic or you're Republican. It makes no difference. What we all need and want is an actual democratic republic, where we have a representational republic or democracy, that we vote for people who we think we can trust to carry our point of view in making decisions. But what's happened is that because of things like Citizens United, where now corporations are treated as human beings, they end up being, with the amount of money that they have, they're able to influence our democracy, our government policies in such a way that it is not in the best interest of the masses. And we can try to convince ourselves that this person or that person in the government is trying to work for us. But when they have received millions and millions of dollars in PAC money from corporations, from dark money places that we will never know where they came from, they're beholden to forces that we have no idea who they are or why they're there. They can say whatever they want until they get into that office. And when they're in that office, then they're beholden to the people who put them there, the people who paid their salaries, the people who got them elected, the people who made them live in these houses that they're now able to afford and be able to have bank accounts that go into the millions of dollars, because they can trade on insider trading, and they're not about to change that law because that benefits them. And until we have people in our government who actually are not invested in power and money and wealth, that those people don't get an opportunity to be in government. Because how does anyone get to be known in this country? They get to be known in this country, well, not just here, probably all over the world, through the media, right? And it costs money to promote ourselves through the media. I remember, gosh, when my kids were in college and I first came out with my book, I had at one point four children, four daughters in college at one time. One was in law school, two were, I guess they were sophomores or juniors, and then one was a freshman. And we were trying to help all of them in college at the same time. But I had just finished my book, and I wanted to get my book out there. I wanted people to know about my book because I really believe it does change everything. But the problem was that it was going to cost me $2,000 a month to pay for the publicity to allow that to happen. And that was not something with four daughters in college that we could do. So it takes so much money to promote things. And I know today, maybe because of TikTok and other social media platforms, perhaps there is a way to get past that if you know the system, if you understand how the system works, which my brain doesn't work in marketing ways, as you know, because otherwise I'd have a lot bigger following than I do. But as a result, we don't know about the good people that are in the government who really are trying to make things better and don't care about money and don't care about fame and don't care about power, but they want to make a difference. We need some Davy Crockett's, some good old boys and good old women that honestly believe that we deserve a chance to live as our forefathers wanted us to live. We are not currently living that way. We're just not. And it isn't just, we like to think that it's just this administration that is breaking all the laws. The difference is only that he's doing it so blatantly that it's obvious to even the most aligned people, even to the people who most like him, they see that the things that his administration is doing are not exactly legal. However, before this time, every other administration did illegal things as well. It's just that they managed to cover them up in such a way that we didn't know they were happening. And if you doubt me, start looking at some of the whistleblower movies that are out there, like the movie Whistleblower, which talks about the horrors that were done in Bosnia during the UN occupation of Bosnia, and the way women were trafficked and murdered there. And it's not a secret that it happened. And yet, there have been no consequences. No one's been brought up on charges. And this was a thing that our government knew about and condoned. And if that was one of those things, what about the other things that have been, and they're not conspiracy theories at this point. Most of these things are out in the open. We know it. They are fact. They're not just somebody's awkward idea. They have since been proven. And yet there's still no consequences. Why do you think that is? Because for one thing, we wait till long enough after that we go, oh yeah, something should have been done about that, but it's too late now. But this was not true during Nazi Germany's. After the Nazi Germany fell, most of the people, not everybody, but an awful lot of the people were prosecuted long after, because there was a worldwide consensus that these things are wrong, and yet we're doing such a great job covering everything up now. Well, up until this administration, we've done such a good job covering everything up that people just don't even think it's real. And I am not, although there were people that would say that I was, for certain, my ex-husband, probably some of my children, would say that I am a conspiracy theorist, because I had experienced in my practice so many people who had been abused by our CIA and military over the years. And because of that, the satanic ritual abuse, all of that, and they were all interrelated. And because they were not people who knew each other or had any previous similar life overlaps, except that maybe their parents were involved in the government, or the military in some way, but all of those people tell the same stories. They would talk about the exact same kinds of experiences. And if you hear that over a decade of time, of most of the people in your practice are experiencing this, it stops becoming a theory and starts becoming something that you understand as fact. So it's not a theory, it's not a conspiracy thing to say that our government has been doing these things. I'm not a crazy person in the corner saying Pizzagate is real. What I'm saying is there are things that are real, and when we throw everything out, we miss the things that are real. And unless we're willing as a country, as a citizenry, to stand up and say, wait a second, this has to stop. We have to stop covering up. We have to stop allowing lies to be our daily reality. We live in this 1984 doublespeak reality where the politicians and the media will just say things and people just swallow it up as though it were true, when it's exactly the opposite of what they're saying, which ironically is what the Illuminati always has done, is to put everything's backwards. And so every time I hear something come forward, like this supposed Charlie Kirk Act, when I hear them talking about that and the way that it's worded, it's clear that it isn't about protecting freedom of speech, it's about confining freedom of speech so that only approved things can be, state-approved things can be said publicly. Does that sound like a free country where we have our First Amendment rights, where we have the right to say what we think? It's not. It goes completely against the First Amendment. And because of that, people are confused about what things mean. Of course you are, because you're being told things that supposed to mean one thing that are really meaning something else altogether, which causes us to not know how to vote, causes us to not know how to where to put our money, what to protest, what to stand up against, because the things that we've been told are so out of alignment with truth. And truth, it's of course can be subjective because each of us see things from different perspectives. And unless we're willing to step into that muddiness, that messiness of what is the known unknown, and question and literally move into a space of questioning everything that we have believed. And coming from this perspective of mine, where I'm looking back on my life I grew up in the late 50s, the 60s and 70s, and experienced the world from the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. And here I am looking back at a perspective that those of us of this age have, and people have to be willing to consider that maybe things are not as they seem. And even for those of us who went through all of that, what was our perspective? What were we taught? What did we see? What did we experience? Who were the voices around us? And what did we assume was real? Maybe it wasn't. We don't know, but we have to be willing to step out of our comfort zone and question and look at whether or not we know everything, because we don't. I don't. And in fact, people who have a brain know that the more you learn, the more you don't know. And the more I learn, the more I don't know. There's no way I can know everything I would like to know. It's impossible. At least by today's technology. Maybe one day it'll be different, but this is why we like AIs, because supposedly it has access to a broader range of knowledge than we do. But of course that can be manipulated too, just like everything else, just like we can be manipulated. And what I have seen is that the people on the left tend to not believe that they are being manipulated, that they're not being affected by the sensational things that are said in the news and on the media. But we are all being affected by this. And we are all being so misinformed that there is no way that we can take a position that is that strong unless we just are afraid to step out of our comfort zone. And if we step out of that comfort zone and start going, well, what's real? What isn't? What's true? What isn't? What can I learn about an area of something? Like, for example, it has always seemed that the Democrats were the ones supporting women's rights, right? That's why so many people voted for Kamala Harris, because we wanted women's rights respected. And yet, that is such a cash cow for the Democratic Party that if that were to ever be resolved, what would they replace it with? It's the same on the Republican Party, who grabbed a hold of the abortion, the pro-life point of view, and they appeal to people's emotions, and they gather tons of money, billions of dollars that go toward promoting pro-life. And if that issue were ever resolved one way or another, then the money would just go away. You see, you understand? I hope you're following me a little bit, because it's vital to where we go from here on. One of the things I was talking about with my friend this week is that we get in this mindset that we don't consider that another person's point of view could have any validity when it doesn't match our own. And that's just not true. We don't learn things unless we're willing. I was talking to somebody about that today. When we learn something new, when we move from thinking one way and we accept new information and we move into a different way of understanding, you have to be confused in the middle. So it's messy, it's confusing, it's muddy, and it's not clear. And we like definitive things, right? We like to be certain about things. And yet it's not possible for us to be 100% certain about anything, except that we have all been manipulated by the press and by the political system that we live in. And then until we are willing to challenge that and come together, it's likely that this will just continue. Because even if we do have an election in 2 years and in 4 years, even if we do, and things were to get reversed and the Democrats did get back in power, and that did happen, we're right back where we started with a government that is based on lies, manipulation, and corporate money. That's just how it is. So what are we going to do to make that be different? Because the one thing that I have found encouraging about what's been going on lately, and I know that a lot of people are going to go, what? It's encouraging to me to see the blatantness of the corruption that's happening right now, because more and more people are going, wait a second, this is messed up. This is not right. It's blatantly wrong. The things that are happening today in this administration are the same sorts of things that have always taken place. The only difference is these are out in the open. And because it's out in the open, people are starting to see it. It is actually uncovering what I think Trump referred to as the shadow government. It is uncovering that by taking the shadow and putting it into the light. And if we were to continue down the path that we're going in this right-wing authoritarian direction, we at least know what we've got. We know the reality. It's obvious. It's out in the open. If we actually did get to have a couple of elections and get the Democrats back in control, we would still be stuck in an authoritarian, oppressive government. It just would be painted very lovely and sweet. with some little pieces of candy thrown at us here and there to make us think that we're in a democracy when we're not. It's not a democracy when the people who have the wealth in this country are in charge of the laws that we must all follow. It is not a democracy when we live in a place where our income, I discussed this a couple of weeks ago, where you have to pay to put your money in the bank. You have to pay the money to get your money out of the bank. You have to pay someone to pay your bills. You have to pay for items that you buy, but you also have to pay a penalty for that, as in your interest rates. And then the business has to pay money to have the right to use your money. I mean, who are the people who are getting all the money? It's not you. It's not me. It's not the shop owners. It's the bankers. It's the corporations and the billionaires who have arranged the laws to benefit them and to keep us being their cash cow, allowing them to have the power and the money that they crave. And people who are in those positions, they get so, even if they start out with a big heart, because that is so addictive, the money, the power, the sense of entitlement that you get, the way you're treated like royalty, I think people get addicted to that sense of entitlement that makes them want more and more of it, but you can never get enough because there's always going to be a part of you that realizes you don't deserve that we are all the same. We are all amazing. We are all these brilliant lights of creativity and resourcefulness and spirituality and connection. None of us are better than any of the rest of us. We all have our place in this world that's important and irreplaceable. But to those people, we are completely replaceable. We are totally replaceable. And therefore, they think they're entitled to being treated in this incredible way. It's like when I see these things happening with the amazing and rapidly changing healthcare things that are happening, like being able to, I read something today about a plant virus that kills the cancer virus. It's a virus that doesn't affect people except that it kills cancer viruses. And then, light therapies that kill cancers without being invasive at all, and sound therapies that do the same thing. Who's going to afford those? Who's going to be able to pay for those things? The advances that we have in AI, the advances that we have in technologies as a rule, our flying cars, are how many of us can actually afford them? And I just don't mean in the United States, I mean the worldwide, how many of us currently have access to the things that Americans currently have, for example. And maybe they don't want it, maybe they don't need it, that's okay. But when we're talking about things that are life-threatening and life-enhancing, people ought to have a choice. We all ought to have that choice. But we're in a society, we're in a culture, a government system, and I don't just mean the United States, where we are growing less and less empowered, even though we have the majority of the population, because for some bizarre reason, money and wealth becomes more important than any of us. And unless we are willing to come together and realize, wait a second, here we are fighting each other when we don't even have all the information to know who the real enemy is. Unless we start coming together and recognizing that we have power, not political power, but we have numbers, which is why, of course, the people in the No Kings protests and all that, there's record numbers of people, and the media doesn't even cover it. Why do you think the media doesn't cover it? Because the media doesn't want to know how many of us are starting to wake up to the fact that we need to change something. And of course, most of those people doing this protest think it's all the GOP MAGA people's fault. They're not really aware that this is a systemic problem that we've been having for decades. But they're correct in that something needs to change. And it's not just about getting the Democrats back in control. It's really not. Ask yourself, have you seen it deteriorate our life quality, even though we've had, medical and technological advances? Is your life less stressful today than it was 20 years ago? 30 years ago? And why is that? Stress is the number one killer of human beings beyond anything else. So what are we going to do about it? Anyway, I'm Melody Brooke. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. I'm a filmmaker, a singer, and speaker. But mostly I'm just a mom and a grandmom, and I'm concerned about my children's future and my children's children's future. Not just in the United States, but particularly here now. Anyway, I'm here every Monday at 5 o'clock when I can. I did miss Labor Day, but I'm also sometimes a few minutes late. But around 5 o'clock every day, I will come on and I will have my Melody's World point of view that I share. And